This episode contains a trigger warning. We do discuss suicidal ideation and mental health struggles. Please listen gently. And if this episode causes you to feel a certain way or triggers feelings within you, please seek the help and guidance of a mental health professional or your support network that will help you navigate that. Enjoy the show. And welcome back to the Big Gay Overalls podcast. I had to think carefully about the name then because I was sitting down with my amazing guest last week for the Authenticity in Action podcast. I'm like, don't say that name. But you guys are going to love this episode today. I have been trying to get the one and only Wendy Cole on this podcast for some time, and now we've managed to link it up. For those that don't know Wendy, she is amazing. She is fierce, wise, very compassionate, very passionate transgender advocate, speaker, and transition mentor. And, you know, Big Gay Overalls was created telling my story of coming out late and sharing the story of those who are coming out late. So Wendy fits that bill perfectly. You know, she has had a lifelong fight to claim her identity, even though she knew who she was quite early, which we'll dig into. But the world definitely was not ready for Wendy to make her appearance. And it took years of navigating all of the shame and the silence and the frustration and the questioning before at 67, she stood up and she goes, "No more. I get to be me now." So welcome, my friend.
Thank you, Lisa. That was such a beautiful introduction.
I just don't even feel like it does your story justice for, you know,
Oh,
the amazing, and like I'm blessed in that we've had conversations offline and like I said on my other podcast, but also as part of the mastermind group that we're in to learn a bit about your story. Like it's just been, I remember the first time you introduced yourself on the mastermind and I was like, holy shit. Like it was and you probably get that reaction a lot is like, how did you like completely flip your life around at that point in a life? At 67, most people are like winding down and, well, you know, I've got maybe 20 years left, 10, you know, if I'm lucky, and I'm just going to just sit with what is until whatever happens. And you completely went, there's no time like now, and now is the time.
the trigger for me was in 2014, November.
Mhm.
I was in a very dark place. I was on the verge of, I had it all set up to kill myself. I was done. I had lived for 67 years
Mm.
knowing I was really a girl. So I looked online. My diagnosis, the first time I tried the transition was 1970-71.
Yeah, wow.
I was on a roll. I was actually coming out to local friends. I lived off campus away from everybody that knew my male representative. And I was coming out to people locally, and everything was going well. My psychiatrist invited me to be a case study patient at a quarterly meeting of area psychiatrists. So I'm in a conference room in a hospital with about 20 shrinks. And I'm just talking, and I get like 5 minutes into it, if that. One of the
Mm.
guys stands up, heard all I need to hear this quarter. I'll see you all next quarter. You're a freak. Points
Wow.
right at me.
Mm.
You should move to New York City and turn tricks like the rest of them.
Mm.
I didn't know what he was talking about then. We didn't have Google. We didn't have social media. We didn't have cell phones. The internet wasn't invented. And there was little or no information about anything like this.
Mm.
At age 10, when my parents threatened to commit me to a psychiatric facility, I remember the psychiatrist saying, well, a little transvestism is normal for some boys growing up, and it goes away. It's a phase. And he's too young to diagnose. as a transsexual, which is what I was known as in those days.
Mm.
And that scared the hell out of me, being committed and fixed. And I had no clue what that meant.
Mm.
And
Particularly as 10, like hearing the words like committed, locked away, you
right.
need to be fixed, you're broken, like there's something wrong with you. And at 10, like that's a lot to take on, let alone to have
Mhm.
initially said the words to your parents at the time as well. Like
Right.
that's a big thing for a little person.
I knew my dad would not go along with it very well.
Yeah.
I was hoping my mom would help me. She was a 1950s housewife
Mm.
under my father's thumb, no
Yeah.
checkbook, no cash of her own, nothing.
Mm.
Typical
Mm.
way most women were in those days.
Yeah.
And so I didn't get any help or support from anybody in my life.
Mm.
And I was told to repress it. Just
Mm.
stop
Push it
telling
away.
us that you're a girl. And if you don't, we're going to commit you.
Mm.
I held on to that all the way through, and it was a struggle. I
Mm.
was in severe depression, anxiety, and fear, along with shame and guilt and all the other fun verbs we have.
The cocktail of, you know, living
Uh-huh.
with an identity that you can't, you're living with it, you can't live it.
Exactly.
Mm.
So that's when I found out, though, from that psychiatric meeting,
Mm.
was this is psychological, no treatment, no
Mm.
cure. You're on your
Mm.
own, kid.
Mm.
That's basically it. I found out in later years that he was right. My only choices would have been San Francisco underground or Manhattan
Mm.
underground,
Mm.
living not part of society.
Yeah.
And forget what we call HRT today.
Mm.
That was done by getting it illegally out of the country or some other means. And
Mm.
because of the war on drugs then,
Yeah.
you couldn't buy needles.
Mm.
I remember my endocrinologist telling me when he was at medical school in NYU
Mm.
in the 80s and 90s, seeing girls sharing needles to inject estrogen.
Mm.
And of course, they would get sick from it.
And the quality of the hormones also wouldn't be guaranteed.
Mm. And what I didn't know until I started this was if you inject too much over a 6-month period or more,
Mm.
it can be very dangerous for your health.
Mm.
So, blood work and blood checks when you start it. But none of that was going on back in those days either.
Yeah, people were just self-medicating.
One of the things that became very clear to me was um, I've tried the transition then, and it's time to just.
Mm.
I know it's bullshit, but I've been told my entire life, have a career,
Mm.
have a wife, have a house, have a family. You'll forget all about being a girl.
Mm.
That's bullshit. It never goes away. Ebbs
Mm.
and flows, has intensity issues, but
Mm.
never goes away. Gender identity is wired up in the frontal cortex of the brain in the second trimester, when sexual orientation is also wired up in the amygdala of the brain
Mm.
during the second trimester. It's hardwired, and that's you.
Mm. Even
So
when you don't have any perception of you at all as a, you know, you're not even existing outside, you know, your
mhm,
mother's womb at that point, but you are being created and defined it then, even if you don't understand it. But, you know, like I remember that when we spoke last time, you were talking about even, you know, when you were really little, you had no reference what it felt like to be female, but you felt it in your core, in your soul.
right.
eh, that goes beyond um, anything that you are defined as or physically presenting.
Exactly. And language is another thing. We just don't have words for it. especially at 4, 5, and 6.
Yep.
I just knew when the teacher said boys over there, girls over there, I wanted to go over there with them, but I had to go over here.
Yeah.
And that's the socialization we get hit with at birth when sex is assigned at birth. It's based on your genitals between your legs, which has nothing to do with your gender identity.
Which, as you have painlessly said, is between your ears.
Yeah,
That's
gender's
where it
between the
starts.
ears, not the legs.
Yeah.
So I see, I think the universe put me on this path because in 2014, when I was looking to see if my diagnosis had changed, it had in 2012.
Oh, wow.
Put this into perspective. Gay people, their diagnosis was no longer a psychological condition as of 1973. Guess when my diagnosis changed? 2012. Nearly 45 years later. I couldn't go fast enough.
Yeah.
I'm done. I'm not going to die a man. That was the title, by the way, to my Huffington Post interview.
What a great title.
And it was true. No, I don't know if I told my wife at the time, I don't even know if I'm going to like living as a woman. I have no clue what it's going to be like. I don't know how to plan it. It's all new experiences. So what I decided to do, especially after starting my therapy session, I started therapy in January of 2015. And she got me into changing my beliefs and thought structures almost immediately.
Yeah, wow.
And that's what I focused on for the first 4 months of 2015, was doing all of that. But it's I know at 67 people would say, why did you do this? Well, I was done living. I was done with the suffering, the pain, and everything. And I knew, especially from my experiences in the last century, that doing it even in this century with rights, with HRT, with therapeutic support, and with medical support. Wow. Even as of 2012, I still had no clue where this was going to go. And I was just going to rip my life apart, tear it apart, turn it inside out and upside down. I had no preconceived ideas of bringing anything from my past or anyone with me. I was prepared to let go of everything. This is how much I needed to do this. And that's the operative word. We need to do this.
Yeah. And I think a lot of people get, attached to, I guess their pre-life and feel like that they need to bring a lot of that with them, all those people. And because it is hard to let go. And I think, something in the pathway that you took when, you got access to things is that you spent the first 5 months getting the inside identity, perceptions, beliefs, thought structures pat. I think when people start to embark on this, they get a bit caught up in just the physical change and how they're presenting and how they want to look, and people can define me this way. And am I going to get surgery? Am I doing this? And how do I? But haven't really had the foundation piece, which is that I own my identity. I've created my identity, and I'm comfortable in this identity before you start portraying it as outward facing, as in physical changes.
Exactly.
Yeah. And I think that work can make it not that this is a journey I've been through, but I would believe that foundation work makes jumping the other hurdles a little bit easier, and being able to let go of other things and past things, because you're like, well, this is who I am now. I'm confident in this identity. And if you're coming along great. If you're not, that's okay too. I wish you nothing but the best, kind of deal. It's hard for us as humans to want to be able to let go, and we sometimes don't reconcile. But if you've done that work, it probably helps in that regard. Am I completely missing the boat there, or?
Nope, you're totally right on.
Yep.
Because once you find a much higher degree of self-awareness of who you are, what you need, that self-awareness, and the self-awareness in how you behave and how you act and how you carry yourself, all of that, and then come to a much higher level of self-acceptance.
Yeah, that's the key, isn't it?
That's the key right there.
Mm.
And what I tell all my clients at this stage is hang on. It's going to be a wild ride. You're going to love it. You're going to have fun with it because you've changed your thought patterns. You've changed all this internal feelings about yourself. And now, when you're putting yourself out and you're out in public, you're approaching it with a whole different energy. You believe in yourself. And that's when you're going to find self-love. I existed for 67 years hating myself, hating my life, hating everything about it. Suicidal ideation is no stranger to any of us. And I had it too, multiple times. So it's a very, I wouldn't wish being born transgender on my worst enemy. That's how difficult it is. But going through doing that mental work first, while I'm experimenting. See, in January of 2015, I was not part of the LGBT world. Had never been. I was on the outside. I hadn't cross-dressed in over 35 years. So I went from 0 to living full-time as Wendy in 6 months. Part of it was one of the things I found out when I started to meet other transgender people and be exposed to the community. Oh, how did you do it in 6 months? Transition is difficult and takes a long time. My response, if that's what you believe, that's how it will be. End of story.
Yep.
You're going to struggle with it. The other thing is when my wife said to me, I announced at the end of February of 2015 that I was going to the Mazzoni Center in Philadelphia to start my HRT. Well, we didn't discuss it. I said, there's nothing to discuss. Oh, well, then I guess we're done. We're getting a divorce. You're going to develop breasts, become a woman. Lord knows what else you're going to do. And all I said was, okay. That was it. Because that's the other thing I really decided I was not going to do. I wasn't going to compromise my life and what I was doing to change it for anybody else's wishes.
Well, you've done that for long enough.
I had did that for 67 years.
You had compromise. Yeah, you were done with the compromising. And, it is like it's an inner knowing that you have that you knew, you didn't understand it, but when the teacher said boys over here, girls over there, those are my people over there, but I have to go here. And, for those of us that come out late in life, and we've had marriages and, lived basically a whole life and ticked all the boxes and all things, one of the common things we hear is, well, if you knew, why didn't you do anything about it? It's like, well, there's knowing, and then there's actually consciously knowing. Like I knew that I didn't fit in my life. I knew that, so I was ticking the boxes, I was doing the things, but it never felt real. So I always remember very clearly at my first wedding, and I'm walking down the aisle and I'm like, oh, am I supposed to cry now? Should I be laughing now? Should I do this? Like it was, and I was looking around and it was more about the event because I wanted to have what everybody said I wouldn't have. So I was doing this thing. And at like, yes, I did love the person that I was marrying, but it wasn't what I thought it should feel like. And now, having gone down the path of marrying my now wife, I'm like, oh shit, this is what it feels like. So I was aware that I didn't fit, and I was aware that, and I was like, does everybody else feel like this? And it's only when you look back in hindsight, which is a wonderful teacher, going, oh, now it makes sense. So it's not a matter of, well, yeah, if I knew consciously 20 years ago, then I wouldn't have embarked down that path. Like my life would look very different. But I think the paths we walk down, and like you said, the universe has sent you on this journey to equip us with skills and experience and knowledge that we can then take forward to be successful in this part. Like if Sharon and I often talk about, oh, we wish we'd met, 20, 30 years earlier so that we would have a longer life together. But we both will also say we would have fucked it up totally because, we didn't have the experiences to equip us to have a really deep relationship that we have now. Like we couldn't have dealt with that, 20, 30 years ago. And coming out late in life, we will sometimes feel like, oh, I've got all this baggage. I've got this stuff that comes with me. But my view is I've started to change my perception as that's a bad thing to that's our superpower. Because we have skills and experience and resilience. So we know we can I've got through, 46 years for me living X way. So I know that I can get through any hurdles now. And like you said, that like there's so much lack of, when I came out late, I thought I was the only person. I thought it's just me. Like no one else has ever done this before. This is like like world changing. Turns out, no. But having access to other people's stories is empowering. And I think that's why the universe has sent us on the path that we are, so that we can use our stories to light the way for other people so they don't have to wait 46 years, 67 years to come out however it is that they want to be into their true selves.
I couldn't agree with you more on that. And yes, I'm grateful to my male facsimile, or my male representative, as I call him. He didn't kill me.
Mm-hmm.
He didn't make me a drug addict.
Yep.
And he didn't make me an alcoholic, although he tried.
Yeah.
But I also developed some very, very good computer skills and technology skills, because that was the career I went into. I was fascinated with Star Trek and with 2001: A Space Odyssey, and that's what inspired me to get involved in the computer industry before PCs.
Yeah.
Before
when it was
the
an entire
internet.
room. Your everyday computer would fill an entire room.
Exactly.
Yep.
So
Yep.
it's that part of my life was absolutely amazing. And it also, one of the things that going through that long time period like this, we all need distractions. Something that we can immerse ourselves in to drown out the little voice inside our head saying, you're all wrong.
You're not good enough. And that may be a subject. Yes, I'm very familiar with the distractions, and I would immerse myself into, like, all in running my own business because this will make me fit in. This will make. I always felt like I wasn't enough, and I'll be, successful, and I'll be enough. And look at me over here. I'm saving and changing lives, but don't look at me too closely because but it's kind of like, this will make me enough. And it never did. Like I always wanted to be included. And when I joined a CrossFit gym, I was like, oh, I'm getting, included in things. So what better way to be more included is I'll open my own, and then I'll be at the center of it, and I'll get included, and I'll be part of something. turns out when you're the owner, you're still that one step removed. And I was like, oh, you guys are all catching up. Great, not me. This is awesome. But that's okay. And I realized then as I went through my journey when I was finally owning who I was and being able to express who I was, and I was coming out to people, that the reason I couldn't have better relationships with 90% of those people is because I was having it at an arm's length sort of level. Like, I'll be the coach, or I'll be, the person, but there's no, very few people did I have a next level, even though I still wasn't, able to communicate to them who I was or what I was feeling, but it was a better relationship. But other people, it was more at arm's length. I was like, oh, that was never going to work. Well, I could not be open and vulnerable in that space because I was asking them to be that with me, but then I couldn't give that back. And now I understand that, relationships are a relationship of reciprocity. There has to be that, you're not going to bare your soul to everybody, but you have to be able to find that level to connect on.
Oh, that's so true. And before I transitioned, I had very few connections with people. I always felt I had this secret to hide. And this is hysterical. Believe it or not, I spent from the early 1970s, when I decided, no, I can't do this because of the conditions. And I'm just going to go and try checking off all the boxes and see where that takes me. So I was terrified of gay people. Gay people would be able to figure out my secret and know who I really am.
Yeah.
Well, I moved into New Hope, Pennsylvania. New Hope was known as the San Francisco of the East during the 80s and 90s. At the time I moved in there in July of 2015, there was one gay bar left. There had been 3 huge ones. One left. And my street was a very nice, quiet street, but very social. And there was a mixed bag of gay couples, straight couples, and just single people living in apartments. And it was a mixed bag type thing. I had flowers left at my front door on a Saturday. Welcome to the neighborhood, Chad and Jason, number 15. Okay. I go down, I introduce myself on a Sunday evening at around 9 o'clock. I'm told, there's a running bet in the neighborhood. Are you a cisgender woman or a cross-dresser who comes to events here on the weekends and you just decided to live here? I said, I'm neither. Back in the old days, I'd be called a transsexual, but I'm transgender. I was born this way. I'm living full time. I'm changing everything. And for the first time ever, I said, I don't know what prompted me to say this. That's why I say I think the universe put me on this path from day one. I'm an open book. Ask me anything you want to, and absolutely nothing's off limits. Jason's response was, you shouldn't have said that in front of Dad. We talked until 3:30 Monday morning.
Yeah, wow.
I was mind blown. They were mind blown. We had a great conversation. I met the 2 other gay couples on my street. And it just kind of blew me away that they didn't know anything about me. So then I started going to the gay bar, and I'd happy hour because the music's low, you can talk. And I'd sit there with gay men, gay women, and of course, straight people who also came in because it was a really nice bar and it was big. And I would ask someone would ask me, well, why are you doing this? What's this all about? And if it was a gay man, especially, I'd look at them and say, well, when you were young, you knew you were gay, right? Yeah, I knew who I was attracted to. Yeah. And you repressed it. Yeah. And You had a career, you had a wife, you had a
Mm.
family, you had the whole 9 yards, right? Yeah.
Mm.
And now you're sitting here beside me.
Yeah.
You couldn't take it anymore and you came out.
Mm.
The only difference between you and me, you became a G, I became a T. That's it.
Mm.
How we got here is a different story, but we're more alike and have more in common than you realize.
Mm.
And
Well, the story is essentially the same. Like,
exactly.
people think about transitioning in very binary terms, no pun intended, but as in, you're going from, male to female or vice versa. But really, you have to, every one of us who comes out at some point in our journey is transitioning to a different identity, whether it be a physical manifestation, which it is a physical manifestation at some point, because you know, assume that full identity in how you dress and how you present, and what feels comfortable in your skin. So I
Mhm,
think we do ourselves a disservice and I think people are scared of or nervous about things that they don't understand,
mhm,
and they avoid it. But really, we are all having to transition to this new identity, which is our real identity. It's our, you know, um, it's who we truly are. But you've still got to make that leap to live that life and be able to be who you are.
mhm.
Um, I had an experience a few months ago. Like, I've played golf all my life, off and on, and 5 years ago, I was a member at this club, and I've recently gone back there, and I was playing in a group with this lady, and she just ran, like, we weren't friends at the time, like, and she made this comment to me, and she said, "Yeah," she said, "You seem a lot happier these days," because I was just talking freely about, my life with Sharon and, you know, so on and so forth. And I said, "Oh, yeah, no, I am." She goes, "Yeah, last time you were here, you really scared me. I was scared of you because you were like super angry person." And that stung a little bit because I'm like, that's not how I perceived myself at the time. But then I look back and go, well, yeah, I was. And it really made me reflect on, I was always fighting some battle externally, because I had no way to fight what I was feeling inside. And I realized, like, how much since I've made that transition, that change, like, yeah, I can walk around the world, and when I first started coming out, I was like, I think I'm gay, and I think this, and I think that. As I got more comfortable with it and started to own the identity, which some, important people in my life at that time helped me do, is like, yeah, so yeah, I don't even hesitate now. Like, when I'm talking about something, so, oh, well, I'm teaching my wife to play golf, or I'm blah, blah, it doesn't even, I don't have that pause. But when she said that, I was really angry. I was like, and she was scared of me. I was like,
Mhm.
oh, well, and I said, I'm sorry, that was not my intention at that time. I said, but, I had a bit going on. But, and not to excuse it, I said, but um, now I'm just comfortable with who I am, and it's a lot easier to go through life and even deal with hard things, because that's I'm not having this internal struggle and dealing with all these other things that go on in life.
I absolutely, totally relate to what you just said.
Mm.
Um, I was so miserable. In fact, I've had people from my past, a few who actually decided they actually liked me better now.
Mm.
That I'm a
Mm.
nicer person,
Yeah.
I'm friendlier. My ex-wife said, "God, you became a social butterfly, and you wouldn't even come to our own parties in our own house.
Mm.
I would put in an appearance and vanish. That would be
Yeah.
it. I didn't want
Mm.
to be part of people."
Mm. Mm.
So many of us, when we transition, become much different people in terms of how we interact with society and others around us.
Mm.
I'm very, very social and outgoing now. I didn't used to be.
Mm.
And yeah, I too probably scared a lot of people.
Mm.
I was
I
very withdrawn.
Yeah. And I've probably done the opposite, whereas I used to be very outgoing and very, you know, like I had to be the life of the party kind of thing. I'd want to be included in everything, go to the things. Whereas now I'm like, I'm just really happy to sit at home and not have, I don't have FOMO anymore. I have JOMO. Like I've got the joy of missing out. Like I'm okay with that
Mhm.
because I don't need that validation of having 50, 100 people around me at a gathering to go, oh, they all turned up to my thing. I know last year when I turned 50, Sharon said, well, we have to do something for your 50th. And I went, do we though? I don't want it to be a big thing. I don't want a thing. I said, look, let's just do lunch, like whatever. And I'll invite a handful of people. And it doesn't matter if people come or don't come. Whereas in the past, it would have been, oh, I want to have I would invite every man and their dog. And not because I didn't enjoy their company, but it was just of me outwardly going, hey, I'm here and I exist and I belong.
Mhm.
So I've probably done the flip side then to where you're like, no, you spent so long being insular that now you're like, now I can be out in the world. Whereas I spent so long out in the world, I'm like, oh, I just want to come back inside for a while now.
Oh, what I discovered being social with my neighbors during the first month or so, and then hanging out at the bar talking to
Mm,
people during happy hour, I actually enjoyed explaining
mm,
what I went through, what my life
mm,
was like, and sharing that with people so that they could, because what I came to the conclusion of, even gay people,
mm.
forget straight people,
Yeah.
had no framework by which to comprehend what I
Mm,
needed to do.
mm,
And that's the other part of this.
mm,
We don't transition to be somebody new or different.
mm,
We transition to be who we've always been.
mm,
That's why I find it so frustrating to see other people in my community struggling with this
mm,
for years,
mm,
when all I know they need to do it. It's a matter of shifting their beliefs, shifting their thought patterns,
mm,
helping them accept themselves for who they are so they
mm.
can be who they've always been.
Yeah. And that's really the hard part. Like people will talk about, the surgery and getting that done and the hormones and that roller coaster. But
Piece of cake by comparison.
yeah, yeah. And I think that's why people lean towards that as their starting point because it's tangible. It's something I can do. And rather than doing the work, and the real work is here and here and accepting that and owning that. And that's the bit where we tend to go, oh, just shy away from that a little bit.
And what you said was very, very important. We are our own validation for ourselves.
Mm,
If I had just jumped into living full time, dressing every day, doing all of
mm,
it, never would have worked out nearly as well.
mm,
That level of acceptance was not there,
mm.
and I would have been focusing on all the wrong stuff.
Yeah.
Um, I get questions from people like, "Well, makeup,
Mm,
yeah, go hire a cisgender cosmetologist who works on women.
mm,
That's your best way to learn about makeup."
mm,
And it doesn't take a long time, and
mm.
they're more than happy to do it.
Yeah.
There's a lot of things that I see so many people in the community getting really hung up on the physical presentation.
Mm,
And then when they go out in public, they're still scared.
mm,
Well, that's when you're very likely to be misgendered.
mm,
You're putting out an energy that says, I'm scared. Or
mm,
most people, when they detect that, they'll say,
mm.
oh, there's something different about this person. And
Yeah,
that's
they're
when they'll start
pretending.
looking.
Mm. And they start to find the holes in the facade, I
Presentation.
guess. And it's interesting, isn't it, that like your physical presentation, once you become like inwardly, you own your identity, you're comfortable with your identity, then that stuff just follows naturally.
Mhm.
So, for years for me, it was like, well, you need to look a certain way, present a certain way, do a certain thing. Whereas I knew I felt more comfortable wearing a different style. And even a few months ago, Sharon and I were going through this process. I said, I don't know what my look is now. She goes, well, it doesn't have to be anything. You don't have to, we're very quick as humans to have labels. So,
Mhm.
like in the lesbian community, you're either butch or soft butch or femme I'm like, too many. I'm just me. And Sharon's like, well, you don't, you can just be whatever you want to be on that day. And over the last couple of months, and I did a post about it recently, one of the groups I'm in, about, some days I feel like wearing jeans and boots. Some days, like I wear, really loud golf clothes, and that's okay. And I don't have to be defined by one thing because you are this sort of person, you have to do this thing. And
Mhm.
now, because I'm okay with who I am, I'm okay with however I present on any given day. There's no rules around anything for me now.
Exactly.
Like, yes, I don't enjoy wearing dresses, and that's okay. So I never have to wear one again as long as I live, and that's great. But that doesn't define me as, oh well, you're this sort of lesbian. Nope, I'm just me. I'm just more comfortable in jeans and boots. I feel more comfortable, and we get hung up on that physical sort of stuff when it's like that will just flow naturally once you're okay with what's here. And I'm okay with me. So if I'm okay with me, then you should just be okay with me. And no one
Mhm.
questions anything because there's no facade I'm presenting as this where it feels like you're just pretending. It's
Mhm.
like, no, this is just me every day. And that's how it presents because I'm comfortable with who I am.
And I know that energy that you put out and
Mm,
people accept that and like you and all of that. That's that's what we all need to do.
mm,
It makes all the difference in the world into how you're accepted. I I've told people to literally stop thinking of themselves as trans women.
mm,
I had someone tell me that she'd been getting misgendered. She
mm,
looked great, all of that, but
mm,
this is the thing. She was walking around doing her errands and
mm,
everything during the day, and there was a constant energy from her of all her thoughts of it's so difficult being a trans
mm,
woman. It's so when am I going to get misgendered? What's
mm,
what's going to happen when I go into this store? All of that.
mm,
I said, stop. Lose the
mm,
word trans.
mm,
Did you do this to become a trans woman or just the woman you've always been?
mm,
Oh, yeah. Then we went on to have some more conversation around that. And I got a phone call 3, 4, 5 weeks later.
mm,
I haven't been misgendered since. It
mm.
works. Of course it does. I know it does.
Yeah.
And I've seen just the reverse.
Mm,
Younger people that I've met
mm,
who absolutely are drop dead gorgeous. When you do this in your 20s,
mm.
there's so much that testosterone hasn't messed up.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And they've had the surgeries and top and bottom. They're drop dead gorgeous.
Mm,
They sound great, look great, and they're miserable.
mm,
Trying to fit in, find where they fit in. They're looking for validation from other people.
mm,
They're trying to make friends even within the community and connect with each other, but they're not really connecting because they're still struggling with their own stuff.
mm. Yeah,
There's a lot of that.
yeah.
And conventional psychology doesn't really work on shifting one's beliefs and perceptions of oneself the
Mm,
way other forms of coaching or, I mean,
mm,
hell, even law of attraction works
mm.
better
Yeah.
than a lot of stuff will.
And I think it's having that awareness that there's not one tool that's
Mm-mm.
going to help you navigate this. Like, and something will work for one person, and for the conventional sort of psychology path will work for some people. But then other people, there's a few more layers in their story to unpack to get to that true identity, and then here's how you go about owning that identity.
Mm-hmm.
Some of the work I do with my clients in my authenticity blueprint is the very first step is, let's figure out your values. Like, you've said what you want, and that's great. Let's figure out who you are and your values, because they're going to guide every action and every decision once you know. And it makes it a very um, linear process. Is like, oh, I think I want to go and do this. Okay, well, this is where you want to be. This is who you said you want to be. Does this align? Oh, no. Well, cool. That's a very easy no. You don't have to. You can take all the emotion out of it. You don't have to get stuck in that washing machine.
Mm-hmm.
And so when you have that foundation, like you did that early work with your identity and yourself, but it makes everything else, every decision, like, well, this is who I am. So if this is who I am, this is what somebody who is like this does. Okay, I want to be a woman. Great, I am a woman. So what does that mean? What does that actually look like in doing, rather than trying to, sticky tape things together and go, yeah, this is a facsimile of, you know, the version of me. Like, no, this is who I am at my core. Then what does that identity do when they move through the world? And
Mm-hmm.
once you know who you are, but we tend to shy away from that. And if we seek guidance or mentorship along the path and it doesn't quite gel with what we think, then we go, okay, well, then this is where it stops, kind of thing. Rather than, there are other ways to help unpack that stuff. But I've still got to be ready to pick up the shovel and do the work and do some
Mm-hmm.
digging. Like you in your role as a coach and mentor for people who are transitioning, one of the things you said that stuck with me on the last recording we did was like, when someone comes to you and said, yes, I want to transition, and one of your first things is like, are you ready to do the work and to fully own the identity? Because if you're not, then I'm not your person to work
Mm-hmm.
with. And it's understanding that, you will find people for various stages in your journey. There's not just one
Right.
solution that fits. And if you are a coach or a mentor in this space, then, you know, it's not just about, well, I can work with everybody. I want to work with people who know what they want and ready to do the work and commit to the process,
Being
not just the
ready, being ready and committed is the
mm,
key.
yeah, and not just load me up on testosterone. Let's go do the thing. I've booked my surgeries and whatever. That's great, but it's going to be a really bumpy road unless you figure out your why and all these things underneath it.
Yeah.
And are you committed to that part of it? Because if
Mhm.
not, I'm not your person.
I can honestly say, because of that work, from the first day I emerged from my apartment to go grocery shopping
Mm,
for the very first time after the moving company dropped my stuff off,
mm,
um, I wasn't afraid.
mm,
And I've always looked at it as, and this is one of the things that I learned from doing this,
mm,
life is all about possibilities.
mm,
It's our own minds, our own beliefs that either empower us to do those things
mm,
or completely shroud those possibilities from our vision. And we won't
mm,
even know they're there And even worse, we'll know they're there
Mm,
and we'll do everything in our power because of our beliefs to self-sabotage and not succeed at it.
mm. And I think we're taught or conditioned from a very young age, like, you know, like a young kid, it seems okay when you're really young, like, yeah, I want to be an astronaut or I want to be this. And people are like, yeah, that's exciting. But there's always that, well, choose something more realistic. Like, you can't be an astronaut for these reasons. And, that happens a little later, but it's still that, like, you need to be practical. I remember that as a kid, I'd always want to be a professional golfer, but I was told that's not possible for you for no basis and no reason apart from that's not what we do. And,
Mhm.
then I thought, okay, well, I want to be a teacher. And I still distinctly remember to this day, my mother said to me, you're no good with kids. You can't teach. And I was like, great, cool. Okay, well, what's the next thing? And her vision is like, well, you're going to go and learn business skills and typing and go work in an office, which to me was like, that was death. I was like, I can't do that. Like, and you need to be more realistic. And we are conditioned all through our lives about, you know, don't dream big. It's be realistic. And then when we get to the point that we give ourselves permission that someone impactful to us tells us, well, you can dream big. You have to dream big. And there's no reason you can't have what you dream about. And by then we're later in our journey through life. We're like, oh, I get to start again. And that's scary and intimidating. Do I want to do the work to embrace that, or do I just stay where I'm now comfortable in the box that I was put into?
Now, I definitely decided that I wasn't staying in the box.
Mm,
From that first year in New Hope, Pennsylvania, I had a blast interacting with people. Actually, and I think this is my purpose. Why
mm,
I'm actually here and still alive after all these years
mm,
is to share my story and put this out for people to begin to comprehend. I don't expect people to understand. If
mm,
you've never looked in the mirror and said, I should have been a boy or I should have been a girl, I don't expect you to understand.
mm,
I'd like you to have a different framework for comprehending it and
mm,
begin to change perspectives where not all the pedophiles and the freaks and the weirdos and all the other things out there. We're human beings who just need to live
mm,
authentically as ourselves.
mm,
And I wound up having surgery at NYU Medical Center in
mm,
2017. And that was a phenomenal experience. I absolutely loved it. I loved the hospital, the staff, everyone. It
mm,
was great. And Dr. Bluebond had done photo shoots for patients.
wow.
So I get invited. Okay. I grew up outside of Manhattan,
Mm,
but in terms of doing things like a photo shoot, hey, I've
never.
never done that before.
Mm,
Okay, just come, bring 3 changes of clothes.
mm,
Okay. So I'm take the New Jersey Transit to Penn Station. I'm out on 7th Avenue. I'm walking downtown to a NYU building to do this photo shoot.
mm,
That's where I met 2 people who became friends, Rick
mm,
and his ex-partner, Joseph.
mm,
Joseph was the makeup artist and hair specialist for the photo shoot, and Rick, who had been a professional photographer in the fashion industry in Manhattan and Paris for
wow.
decades, was doing the photo shoot.
Mm,
And that was just the beginning for
mm,
me. I had opportunities to participate in other events. I was inadvertently dragged on stage and handed a microphone and said, talk about your life
mm,
to about 3 or 400 people.
wow. Yep.
And my male facsimile would have run for the hills.
Yeah.
No
Just
way
like,
in
no.
hell I would have showed up.
Yeah.
I had fun.
Yeah. And it's amazing when you can embrace something and let yourself have fun and go, oh, shit, this is what actual living is all about.
Mhm.
Like, people are going through their lives, they're having fun every day. Like, I'm new to this and I'm embracing experiences. Sometimes as we go through our journeys, we can get scared or nervous about embracing or being open to opportunities because we're kind of always waiting for when the bad thing's going to happen. Like, when is, if I put myself out there, like when I started this podcast and I was encouraged to start it, the words to me were, somebody who is where you were needs to hear that it can be okay on the other side and to get through. So that kind of pushed my compulsion to tell my story. But every single time you put out an episode, it's like, is this going to be the one where people are going to hate on me, or this is going to happen, or I'm going to have a negative impact? And I've been doing it for a year now, almost a year, and that's not happened. Like,
Right.
nobody in my private life has come up to go, actually, you are a shitbag human, and I I didn't know that about you or this event, and yeah, that's kind of changed my perspective. Like, none of that has happened. And we kind of, when we then jump into something and we experience how joyful and amazing it can be, we're like, oh, I wish I'd done that earlier. But
Mhm.
we still have those fears that hold us back of, you know, life is meant to be hard. It's meant to be like, as someone who is coming out or transitioning, we can get attached to the struggle and use that struggle to define us. And, sometimes I'll say something to Sharon, and, when she thinks I'm being a bit of a martyr, she's like, get off the cross. We need the timber for something. Like, it's, you know, she's like, you don't have to be defined by the struggle just
Right.
because, you've now chosen to, claim your identity and you're living out. It doesn't have to be hard. Life can go on and be very straightforward and very easy if you choose it to be, and embrace the opportunities. And I think we
That
get stuck in that.
Oh, definitely.
Mm,
The thoughts that we carry,
mm,
they wind up defining us before anything else does.
mm, mm,
And that's one of the things that I still work on daily.
mm. But that's it, isn't it? It's a work, and it doesn't end. Like we were saying at the start, like, when does my transition finish? Well, it doesn't.
No.
We come out, I've said it 1,000 times in this podcast, we come out 1,000 times every other day. It's not just, I came out, on this date. That was your big coming out, but I bet you've come
Mhm.
out a lot since. And even if it's just a simple thing of walking through a shopping center and I'm holding hands with my wife, like, it's you're still coming out to somebody different in your day. And so it is a journey, but you've got to always do that work to keep yourself on track and in check, because it's really easy to drift back to old patterns and beliefs.
Yes.
Um and people say, like, acquiring a new skill in life, it's a bit like riding a bike. Once you've got it, you don't forget it. But that's not necessarily the case when it comes to our beliefs and our patterns. Like you said, so much is conditioned even before we're born. And then when we come out, here are your little labels and boxes, and here's how you should be. This is how you live a life. That, we have to keep doing work to stop falling back to the default setting, for want
Mhm.
of a better term.
Because depending on the amount of trauma
Mm,
associated with that belief, it
mm,
can really embed itself in your subconscious and stay there.
mm,
And it might surface and you're able to put it down and change it and shift it yourself,
mm,
which is what I do.
mm.
But with those things that are severe trauma,
Mm,
that's when you need help to overcome it.
yeah. And I think it's learning to recognize, like, I would have said when someone what was your childhood like? And because when we think about people having trauma in our childhood, you assume it's like a big event. It's a massive thing. And I was, I had a pretty good childhood. But then when you start to unpack where your beliefs and like even the subtle manipulations, and I'm not saying that they were done intentionally by people, like, people do the best they can with what they know at the time, and they've got their own conditioning, their own experiences. So I'm not saying it was done maliciously, but the subtle manipulations and subtle changes, and you're like, oh, actually, there's, trauma there. And, Sharon will always pull me up because, I was going through like insanely creative for a period and I'm doing all these things. She goes, yeah, that's a trauma response because she's a counselor by trade. So she has a skill set and she's not afraid to use it on me. But it's like you're trying to be validated by your outputs, by what you do, by, I have a purpose. And I sat and thought about that and I was like, oh, I know where that's come from now. So, I think we could do better as a society or as a collective to be okay with acknowledging we've all got some level of trauma, and it doesn't necessarily have to be trauma in a giant explosive sense, but there are things that shape the way that you think and things that you give weight to that you don't even consciously know that you do until you have someone who's not sitting in the middle of the fire and not looking at things through your lens of experience that can look at it and go, wow, that seems like that was a powerful experience. And you're like, oh, I never thought about it that way. You need that external person to hold that mirror up to you to go, that's interesting. You said that. Tell me more about that, when it's something that you could easily just gloss over. That's the power of like coaching and therapy and having those conversations where you don't realize what you're saying to somebody until they go like, whoa, whoa, whoa. You just said that. That's a really interesting thing. Let's talk about why you described yourself that way. Oh, I've never really thought about it. Let's think about it.
That's so very true, Lisa. I still have, fears of things that come up that I actually go get help for. I started speaking. Well, I found out that one of the reasons that I had no problem going on stage and speaking in New York City. I always felt safe in Manhattan. And then I found out that I could actually be on stage, then could go and mingle with people afterwards, totally out. And then the minute I hit the sidewalk outside, I'm just another woman on the street. And I absolutely loved that.
Yeah, wow.
That was so empowering. And I think only for 2018 and 2019, I lived kind of stealth, except when I was doing some appearance or something like that, or when I was coaching someone. And I was only formally coaching at that time. 2020, I put everything online. I put myself online. What I didn't realize is I shot myself in the foot for being stealth.
Yeah.
Oh boy, Google my name. So that also affected my dating life. After my surgery in 2017, and my surgeon said, Wendy, you're ready for sex. Yay.
Sounds so simple.
Oh, yeah, it does sound simple. I asked her if she had anyone in mind.
Yeah.
Oh, God. I also asked her, too, since it was a teaching hospital.
Would they teach you?
Did you video the surgery? I'd love to have a copy. I was so curious as to how it was all done. So anyway, it's just been an amazing experience and journey through all of that. And I did enjoy dating.
Yep.
I enjoyed being with a man,
Mhm.
which was a shocker.
Yes.
My male facsimile wasn't gay. He knew it.
Yep.
Nope, not me,
Not
not gay.
Yep.
I got the checkbox. I'm married to a
Mhm.
woman.
Yep. Done the thing.
Well, the only thing I can conclude in hindsight is in the second trimester of birth, female got enshrined in my gender identity section of my brain,
Mhm.
and heterosexual got enshrined in my amygdala of my brain,
Mm.
which is where that stuff all happens.
Yep.
And I found out I don't know if I'm bi yet.
The journey continues.
The journey continues. That's a possibility. Who knows?
Mm. Mm.
I feel attraction to people.
Yes. Mhm.
And then that's who I am attracted to.
Mm.
I am attracted. Have found since transitioning. Well, my first landlord introduced me to this. He said, "I'm not shaking your hand. Gay men don't shake hands. We hug." Okay. So he hugged me.
Mm.
I actually liked it. That was the first
Mm.
time a man had ever hugged me.
Mm.
That was a prelude to things to come. But
Right.
I have enjoyed being just living my life open to possibilities.
Mm.
I was trained by my parents and enshrined in my early life of plan everything, weigh out the pros and cons, analyze this, analyze that. Bullshit.
Mm.
I'm not doing that.
Mm.
I decided in January of 2015, I don't know enough about being a woman. I don't know how this is going to go. I'm not even going to try and plan it.
Mm.
I'm going to do what feels right for me for the first time in my life at the
Mm.
time.
Mm.
Just what feels right to me. And that's
Mm.
what I'll do.
Mm.
And I've done that all the way through.
Yep.
In January, I joined Toastmasters to improve my public speaking.
Yeah. Awesome.
So I'm going to this group. It meets in person. It's in a section of the city that I've never been to. I don't know anybody in the group. I'm in front of about 25 strangers or so. I decided, okay, I'll do whatever. What if I'm introducing myself? I'm not going to prepare anything. I'm just going to do what feels right at the moment. And that's the way I've done this for the last 10 years. And it's worked for me very, very well. I stood in front of those people when it was my turn to introduce myself as a new person to the group. Hi, I'm Wendy Cole. I was born transgender. I'm here to improve my public speaking because that's what I do.
Yeah.
And
Awesome.
the facial expressions and everything were priceless. I loved it. It was great. And they've been fine. I've been
Yeah.
fine.
Yep. And I think it's, that your attitude is amazing in that I'm open to opportunities because, there is no rule book. And even if you are, a cis woman, there's still no rule book on how to be a woman. There's no, you don't get told, like, you get told through conditioning, but in reality, like, being a woman or being a man or, there's no defined, like, this is the right way to do it.
You're so right on that because I came to the realization after talking to some of my cisgender women friends, it's no great shakes being born female either.
No. No, it's like, why do you want to choose this? Because like this is it's not just sometimes we can look at something and go, oh, the grass is greener. And it's like, yeah, we don't know what we're doing either. We haven't figured out how to operate this machine either. So if you figure something out, let me know. Like, yeah.
They all told me that what you just said was
Mm.
they were told all these things they couldn't do
Mm.
because they were girls.
Yeah. Yep. And
And
it's like through my experience, like operating a gym, and a CrossFit gym is very different to your regular Globo gym. And so many women came to me and had never lifted a real barbell, for example, or they stuck to the women's only section of the gym. And if they wandered down to the squat racks, the bros would be like, "Are you lost? Like, are you looking for the girly weights?" And and then I'd say, "Well, here we've got one sort of barbell, so you're gonna pick it up." And they're, the first time they even put 20 kilos over their head, saw this thing, and they're like, it's okay to do, these things and to be strong.
mhm,
And through CrossFit, like I discovered, well, they were called strongman competitions where you could lift like heavy cement balls and drag heavy things, which I just loved, like getting in, flipping giant tires. And it's like, yeah, women can do this too. But we're
mhm,
told like you use go to the little pump class, do the little pump weights, and you wear the thing, and this is how you should be. CrossFit showed me that because we're all the same in that gym, like no, there's no boys and girls barbells. Like it's barbell. It's and that I could be exposed to things that I would never have given myself the opportunity to do because of the rules.
right.
Like um that's not very girly, or that's not what nice girls do. Oh,
Right.
well, I guess I'm not a nice girl. This is awkward. Um,
I'll own it.
yeah, I'll take that. And now that's a compliment. But we're taught so many things, and we limit ourselves. And then again, when you get to this point later in life where you're like, it's okay to be a badass. It's okay to do these things to run, jump, climb, crawl, whatever. That like that's that's not what you do.
Mhm.
This is your role. And it's really funny when we can own that and give ourselves permission to explore that and do that and realize the rules are not the rules. They're just given to us. And it's okay to break them and not follow them.
And that's another thing about the rules uh, for boys and girls, men
Mm,
and women,
mm,
is heteronormative society has this rule, which you mentioned earlier, is how we're supposed to appear.
mm,
Well, I'm sorry, but if I'm comfortable wearing a dress, I'm going to wear a dress.
mm,
And if you're comfortable wearing jeans and whatever, cool.
mm,
But let a woman um, put on jeans and a button up shirt and stuff like that.
mm,
By society standards, that's perfectly fine.
mm,
But a man putting on a
mm,
skirt or a dress or wearing
mm,
heels, or God forbid, be discovered wearing lace panties under his suit and
mm,
tie. Uh, the society has a totally different standard for men
mm,
that is very oppressive
mm,
and forcing them into these little boxes
mm.
where they belong.
Yeah, I mean, it's even back to childhood, like boys don't cry, you
Hmm.
know, and so all that emotional stuff gets like jammed away. And then we've got men struggling to raise their own men as when they become fathers because they've and as the world's evolved and people are more emotionally aware and emotionally intelligent, they're like very uncomfortable still in that space because they're still operating on that base level of, well, this is what I was taught and this is what I've been conditioned and told.
Right.
And it's very hard to then takes a strong person to put up their hand and go, help me do this a different way.
Hmm.
Mm. And it's we've all got those stories and those conditions and patterns, and it's being prepared. Again, it keeps coming back to doing the work, to having the awareness that I need to change and evolve, and then doing that work,
Yep.
which is sticky and uncomfortable and hard, but it's fucking rewarding at the end when you can see that progress and go, oh, it is much better on the other side.
Absolutely. And one of the things that I encourage doing while they're doing that mental work is also, I did it for myself. There was a rule in the household that I could not leave the house in a dress. Well, I broke that rule. I said, on Thursdays, I am going to therapy as myself. I started that on my third session, which led to a conflict, which made for an interesting week. But that's the way it was. And every week on the way to and from therapy, I would pick things to do as an experiment to see what it would be like to be out in public in a dress and heels, and whether or not I could even do it. And that was very interesting and very, very informative. And what I found was, over the course of the first 4 or 5 months of that year, doing the mental work to change my self-acceptance and self-awareness, and doing those little life experiments, and actually would think about them and envision them and meditate on them. And how would I feel walking out in public like this? How would this all feel? Not what I think, because the minute think comes into it, all the negative shit comes too. No, how would it feel? It would feel wonderful. It would feel this way. Oh, what would it? Never having been outside in the wintertime in a dress, I wouldn't know what it was like to have bare legs or stockings or any of that stuff. Wouldn't know. Okay, gonna go find out.
Yeah.
And what happens is a snowball effect. Is you start overcoming all these limiting beliefs that you hold. And the first few are very difficult to get rid of. The next few are a lot faster. And then it just keeps mushrooming.
And once you keep proving to yourself that, oh, this is something I believed and I changed it and it was okay.
I survived.
It does fuel you for the next one. And, you know, a lot of people think that when you're embarking on any life change, could be, you know, changing a relationship, changing a career, that you have to burn everything to the ground to start again. But you can do it in these little micro steps where you create a way to do it safely for yourself. So, and some things that you do, like you said, you would think about and meditate on the feelings of what would it feel like, and you would experience it first. You know, just no one else knew that's what you were thinking about or pondering or whatever. So you can make those minute steps that only you know about, that you're starting to make that change. And then as you do each step, it compounds to the next step, the next step. So then the bigger steps are easy. It's not just, you know, you one day go, hey, I'm flipping my life and this is what's happening. And from this point on, this is what will happen. You were like, okay, on Thursdays, I'm going out into the world as Wendy. And, you know, every other day I'll do all the other things that I have to do to get through. But Thursdays, and it's just, but that started well before that first Thursday, when you started thinking about that and planning it and having and doing that internal work that, you know, no one else really knew about at that time, except, you know, your therapist and whatever. But little tiny micro steps let you take the bigger steps. It doesn't have to be the big step today.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I had a client who told me she hadn't been out of the house in 3 days since she decided that she was going to force herself to live full time. So my statement to her was, after we're done with this session, you're getting in your car and you're leaving. I don't care if you just drive around. Just get out of the house and be out in public with some degree of visibility. And if you're really brave and you need food, go to the supermarket.
Yeah.
That's another safe place to go and wander around and be seen and see other people as yourself. Those types of steps all help get you over the hard stuff.
Yep.
If I hadn't done all of that, by the time I went for my legal name change, which in the state that I lived in at the time necessitated that I go to court and stand in front of a judge, in front of a courtroom full of people, and announce that I was transgender and I'm changing my name from and to, and I'm living full time. My lawyer gave me the whole script for this to say to this judge. And then she told me after that, keep your mouth shut. Don't say a word.
Yeah, stop talking.
If you're supposed to speak, I'll tap you.
Yeah.
So, and that's because too, in this country, even at that time, this was 2015, a Republican judge in a very predominantly Republican controlled county. And she assured me, and he did, he looked for every way possible to refuse me, and she countered him. There were two other people at that same day who didn't hire lawyers. They were both declined. He made up reasons. And did his thing. So, but my point is going through that experience, I wasn't afraid.
Yeah.
I really, honestly, truly didn't have any fear and wasn't nervous. I just did my thing. And that's because of everything I'd done up to that point.
Yeah. And it gives you that. I'm listening to a book at the moment called Your Next Conversation, and it's about that when you can have these little wins within yourself, you give yourself the confidence. Yeah, I'm the kind of person who does what I say I'm going to do, because I say to myself, I'm doing this, I go and do this. And you build that confidence within yourself that, okay, I can get past this. And as I said at the start, our life journey prior has given us resilience that, well, I've got through hard things previously, so I know I've got the skills and experience to overcome. If I'm 15, 20 years old, just coming into claiming my identity, I've got no experience that tells me that I can get through hard things. So I'm a little bit stuck, and it's scary as fuck. And, that's where having the right support is critical. But for those of us navigating the journey with a whole toolkit of life skills behind us, we can go, I don't know what's going to happen. I'm open to the possibilities, but I do know based on past experience, I will be okay, because I have resilience and I have this and I have that, and I know who I am. So it gives us that little extra bit of fuel in our tank of courage, is like, I've done hard things before. I'm going to do hard things in the future, and it's going to be okay.
That's one of the reasons why I do feel badly for a lot of the younger people going through this. As I've had some of them tell me that, well, I get told all the time by my friends I'm not trans enough, or I'm not and it's all the age, it's the life experience or the absence of it.
Yeah. And you're just confused, you don't know, you haven't lived enough life to learn. Well, like you knew from the moment you were born, like you knew, but it's just having the confidence and knowing who you are to go to stay that course, regardless what people will tell you. Like, who you are within your soul if you bother to sit with it and look and really understand. And then when you have that confidence in yourself to be able to know this is who I am and stay the course, you can push through. But you do need that level of, and I don't care where you're at in your journey, you do need that level of support to have someone who is a little further down the path than you. Like we said, the path never ends, but we're a little further down and can walk the path with you, not for you, not tell you the best way to go. Your path is your path. My job as a coach is not to give you the answers, but to walk alongside you and help point out, well, there's a pothole coming up. How are we going to navigate it? You could jump into it and jump out the other side. That's cool, but maybe there's another way, rather than, oh, there's a pothole that's going to cause me to stop. our job as coaches and mentors is just to light the way a little bit and help you navigate your path, because your path and where you want to wind up is completely unique to every single one of us. And if anyone says to you, here's my 10-step guide to transitioning, run away. You know, here's my 10-step guide to coming out. Bye. Like, they're not the people that you need. It's like, hey, I don't have the answers, but I'm going to walk it with you. You know, and people have reached out to me through this podcast and on social saying, oh, you know, I appreciate your wisdom. And I said, well, it's not wisdom. I said, I don't have the answers, but all I'm doing is sharing my perspective. And if someone gets something from that and it makes their next steps a little easier, then great. Then I'm happy to keep putting myself out there. But don't for 1 minute think that I've got this shit figured out, because I sure as hell don't.
Yep, we're not delusional.
Yeah. Yeah. We're still learning, and I learn from my clients and I learn from, you know, other people. I've like I said at the start, like I've learned so much from you as, you know, your journey and helping my education and understanding of, you know, transgender journeys and what that could look like, even though everyone's is going to be different. And, you know, if you weren't brave enough to do the work that you do, then, you know, people don't get the education that they need and the understanding. Even in the LGBTQI space,
Right.
there's still a lot of misunderstanding of the T letter in that. Like Sharon and I will often joke, like, we're L, we're at the front, and that's good. Nothing can change of that. We can't get abbreviated, and there's definitely no confusion. But I do feel empathy for, you know, those further down the alphabet, shall we say, that there is still that misinformation and education and things that we don't understand, we're scared of.
I recently read an article that a very good friend of mine just shared with me. It was written in Slate in 2024. I forget the exact year. Anyway, it was all about why transgender are so easy to demonize and marginalize. Well, as I said, in 1973, being gay lost the psychological condition. And there was a lot of activism all the way through the 70s, 80s, 90s, and the first decade of this century. And the article even quoted Massachusetts Representative Barney Frank as saying that the L, the G, and the B made a strategic decision in the 80s, 90s, and the first decade of this century, when they're fighting for protections and legislation, don't include the T's. Because explaining the T to middle America is a very high lift and very difficult to do. And that's exactly why I started speaking.
Well, someone's got to start lifting it.
Yeah, there is, society has no framework for me or anyone like me. And then even within the T's, I was interviewed by 2 millennials. And I'm talking in my coaching about, well, one of the things I do teach is how to blend into society. I hate the word passing.
Yeah.
Blend into society as any other woman. It's and depending on where you live, especially in this country, it can be a very valuable skill.
Yeah. Yeah, 100%.
Being able to blend in. Well, I loved their response. Looked at me and said, oh, that's very well and good. And that's very nice. And that you do that and you can do that. We don't want to. We're going to break the heteronormative society of what their view of gender is. Most people in this society do not use the word gender and don't really have a full understanding of it. For them, your sex is female, your sex is male. That's it.
That's it. Gender and sex are the same thing.
Exactly.
Mm.
And or just leave the word gender off, the way the federal government just did. They deleted it from the vocabulary.
Yeah, it doesn't exist. That word was never a word. It's
Uh-huh.
it's really, for as much as society has changed and evolved, there's still a lot of work to be done. And
Absolutely.
we do need more people to be brave enough to tell their stories
Mhm.
so that other people can go, oh, it's okay, and keep the stories being told and the experiences being shared so that other people who are navigating this can do it a little easier and get access to information that, we may not have had.
Mhm.
And now that it's so freely, and I know that things are difficult in other parts of the world, and even, in Australia, there are issues around it as well. And it's just that lack of understanding, and what we don't understand, we're automatically told to be afraid of.
Exactly.
So I appreciate you, my friend, and I appreciate the work that you do, and your voice is much needed. Where can people follow your story, your content, your information to broaden their own knowledge or get the support that they might need as well?
Meetwendycole.com.
I love your domain name. That's just amazing. I just think that that's so cool.
It works. It's good.
Yep.
And um, I'll make sure you have the information for my podcast as well that I'm co-hosting with Lynn Murphy.
Mm-hmm.
Demystifying the transgender journey.
Yeah, and it's amazing. I love listening to you two talk and the guests that you've had. Like, I've learnt so much from that. So, I encourage everybody to not only subscribe and follow to Big Gay Overalls, but also jump over to that one as well, because I think that that's some really powerful stories and information for sure.
Yep, we've had a really, really good therapist on.
Mm-hmm.
Who lives in LA and he's gay.
Yeah.
And I've known him from his high school days.
Yeah. Wow.
And we're having parents of transgender. We had a mom on that we did an interview with. We're looking at all the aspects of it, not just the transgender people, but all the people in their lives and getting their stories too, because it does affect people.
Yeah. Everyone
And
has their own perspective.
and it's just been totally fascinating. And also in keeping with what you said earlier, that's one of the reasons why my one-on-one coaching, I did what my business coaches did. I put together a program. Yeah. Okay. I have very rarely used the whole thing as is. It's always tailored to the person's needs.
Yeah, 100%. It's like, I've got my authenticity blueprint program, which is, structured for 6 weeks. But again, when you come to me and you talk about what you want, I'm going to tweak and change that. The bones are the same, but make it individualized for your particular journey. Because there are some things, like if you're coming to me because you want to make a giant career change, well, having a safety net of people to come out to probably isn't something that we need to cover. But
Right.
it's all rooted in things which are foundational to you being successful. But yeah, the power of coaching is that we can not say, well, you've just got to follow this template.
Right.
It is individualized. And I think you're right. Everyone's journey through whatever transition they're going through in life is going to be unique to them.
And that's one of the reasons too why I've been actually very successful at working with women entrepreneurs or women who are changing their roles in the corporate world. Self-doubt and imposter syndrome.
Yeah, they're at the root of so much.
And I know a lot about them.
Yeah. It doesn't get much more real than that.
Yep.
But I think that the work that you do is important. And again, I feel so blessed that I've been able to have 2 recordings with you now, and I get to interact with you through our connection on Christine Blosdale's mastermind. So I appreciate you. Thank you so much, and for sharing. I feel like this is a completely different chat to the last one we had, and different aspects on your journey. So I appreciate you, and I thank you for your time today.
Thank you so much, Lisa. I've really enjoyed being here. Thank you.